kidding me? What a turnout. Thank you so much for coming to my home area. I actually live here locally, even though I've worked for Microsoft. A lot of people came to me today and said, oh, you're all the way from Seattle, coming down here to Dallas. It's so nice. I'm like, I just live about 40 minutes from here. So if you're from the area, I live in North Richland Hills. I've been at Microsoft for 32 years and I've always lived in Texas. Been based here. And I am blown away by the turnout today. So thank you so much for supporting the Fabric Tour here in Dallas. And all the organizers are so cool. Our organizers are amazing. Totally. Okay, let's do something fun here. I don't know how to get this thing off my screen. If I click that, maybe. Sure, does it just go away? Ah, look at that. That's good enough. Okay, let's do something fun for the next 35 minutes. Okay. So first of all, just make sure you know I am. Thank you for the introduction, Principal Architect. Everybody's asked what that means. That just means you've been around forever. 32 years. And by the way, if you're younger than 32 years, do not raise your hand. Because like, oh my gosh, you're in the audience going like, I wasn't even born when he was starting on diskettes and SQL and so forth. No, it's a great honor to work for Microsoft. I spent 50% of my time at Microsoft doing this right here, talking to people about technology, talking about SQL, that's what I work on. 50% of the other time is working internally within the product team, the engineering team, mostly based out of Redmond, and shaping the future of what we do, just based on my experience, knowledge, and working with customers. So when I thought about the Fabric Tour, what I thought might be interesting for you is to hear about how is SQL involved with Fabric? What does that story look like? Let me get back here. So, why would SQL even be part of Fabric? How does it even work? But hey, I'm an open source presenter. I want you to sit back and relax. You see this link here, AKMS Bobboard MS? That's where the deck is. And any demo I'm showing you is in the deck itself. Now we got 35 minutes. I might not do everything inside the deck there because I want to cover two things before you walk away today. Number one, that SQL server runs inside the Microsoft Fabric platform as a database. You're like, huh? Isn't that like an analytic thing? Power BI, all that stuff? Number two, I want to show you how to get your data into the Microsoft Fabric from SQL running outside of it in a concept called mirroring. Some of it's going to be a little high level, some of it's going to be a little bit detailed. But I hope you walk away today with those two thoughts. How do I run SQL Server inside this Microsoft Fabric platform, and why would I want to do it? And how do I mirror or copy or replicate my data in Fabric, and why would I want to do it? So let's do it this way. First of all, you should know this amazing story. I cannot believe after 32 years and diskettes ago that we would be doing this. We launched, you've seen the public preview, a new version of SQL Server 2025, with a cool logo. You wouldn't believe how long it takes to get a logo at Microsoft. It took me years to convince them to do this, right? And then we have our cloud version of Azure SQL and this new SQL database in Fabric. And when I've told customers and developers about this, they're like, what's going on? Why would I have 3 different versions of this? And there's a very good reason why. Because number one, you may want to run SQL Server in full control of the box product, run it totally on premises, or you might run a platform as a service, Azure SQL Server as a database. But you also might want to use this new SQL database in Fabric, and we're going to talk about that. Look at this foundation at the bottom. You should know that no matter where you run SQL, it's the same T-SQL language, it's the source code, the actual source code for SQL Server is the same code branch for all this stuff. We just light up some things differently in different places for different reasons. Same engine, same tool set with SSMS. Getting your data into Fabric can happen anywhere SQL exists. AI, what a surprise, you just heard me in the panel talk about it. People building AI applications using data in SQL with things like vector searches, and the Copilot experiences everywhere you need it. So this is our story. This is the story of the Microsoft SQL product line that works everywhere you need. And I want developers to know that you can develop once and deploy anywhere you need it. But let's talk about this database in Fabric concept. The Microsoft Fabric is exactly what it says at the top up there. It used to say the Unified Data Platform for Analytics when we launched it in 2023. The code name was Project Triton, and when I first heard it come out, I'm like, this is just Power BI, isn't it? And somebody said, no, it's bigger than that. I'm like, I don't know, it just said Power BI to me. It's like the Synapse people in Power BI got together here with a new name. I don't know. And the other thing I laughed at, I said, doesn't that like the Frontier's logo, the Frontier Airline logo? So I kind of made fun. This is being recorded, right? Oh, darn. Arun, sorry, Arun. I've actually made fun of that before in an event in front of him before, and I'm still alive today. So, You know what though? It's actually way more than that. Notice it says the unified platform for AI transformation. It also could just say for just data. Here's the story. The story is this beautiful thing in the middle called One Lake. And it is a really cool story. The ability to bring a common lake together for all the data you need and to do all this stuff you see in these icons. Data factory type pipelines, data flow, data transformations, all the analytics you need that you see and love from Synapse, or things in notebooks and PySpark, or even things like in real-time intelligence, which is a really cool story. We'll talk some about that in SQL. And then of course the beautiful Power BI. If you know the famous guys in the cube, they of course are all over this technology. But what about that thing in the middle, databases? Why would you want to run a database, operational database, not a warehouse, inside Fabric? So let's first talk about that. When we first decided to come up with this story about a SQL database in Fabric, we were already working on this. And that is the ability to mirror or replicate any data anywhere you have it and put it in that One Lake, that beautiful thing called One Lake. And notice that SQL Server is part of that story because we knew that a lot of our customers are not going to move their database into Fabric. Some want to, but some just want to keep it where it is. But they want the ability to take advantage of that unified, beautiful story of being in One Lake. So mirroring is that concept. So when you see the rest of this presentation, it's talking both about the database being in Fabric, which by the way is automatically mirrored, already in One Lake, and bringing a SQL Server that is not in Fabric into this fold. So let's do it. When we were building out this idea of SQL database in Fabric, I remember my manager specifically coming to me in way back in the spring of 24 and said, we're going to put SQL Server inside Fabric. And I said, why? They're like, why are we going to do this? And he goes like, I'll tell you why. Because we have customers that want to go trust the SQL Server engine and use the familiar T-SQL language, but actually store the database itself and use it, access it, well integrated with that Fabric platform story. Like I want to take advantage of the fact that SQL database is deployed in seconds, is sitting out there, it's mirrored in the One Lake already, it's easy to access in Power BI, it's easy to access in a PySpark notebook, it's easy to access in a data flow if I want to. All the beautiful things that go inside Fabric, it's easy to get to. But it's also this, it's more simpler. So even take the Azure SQL concept of a platform as a service, which is a simpler way of deploying SQL Server, and make it even more simple. What's an example? Customers would come to us and say, look, I'm a developer, I love your engine, but can I just say I want a database? Like, what do you mean? They said, well, have you ever been to the Azure portal? There's like 70 options there. I go click here, I gotta cut all these different drop-down boxes. Can't you just put a bunch of defaults behind this and then I'll configure it after the fact? I'm like, we can do that. That's simple. Or, when I do this, can I just get a quick query editor right in that Fabric experience built in to start running my queries and just start going after it? We can do that. But they said, oh, by the way, I still want all that beautiful autonomous things that you do in Azure, like automatic backups, auto HADR, Entra security built-in, all that stuff that the cloud gives me, I still need all that stuff. Well, we can do that too. And by the way, I need to start building that application journey with AI. Can you make sure whatever you're building can help me do that? We're like, we can do that too. And so when I showed this one time to a customer, they're like, it sounds like it's the familiar SQL Server that I've used today, or Azure SQL, but you're just doing it inside this Fabric platform. I said, that's exactly it. We are now letting you use a SQL Server or Azure SQL engine inside the Fabric platform, a very simple way to do things, a very autonomous way to get things done and make sure things are working correctly and optimized for an AI app. So let's kind of unpack it a little bit. All right, so what is simple? A database literally can take seconds to deploy in a cloud platform, which, by the way, if you've done this in Azure SQL, it can take minutes, right, or more to do it. It can be done in seconds, and here's how we do this. We have a pre-deployed set of databases just waiting for you. We have a whole fleet, we call that, of databases waiting around for our customers to use. And when you need it, you just pick it, and we just get it to go. And you know what you do when you deploy one of these things? Sorry? You give it a name. That's real complex, isn't it? Here's my name. That's what customers ask us for. Like, hey, can I just give it a name and just you put it out there, and I'll configure it after the fact. So provisioning and requiring a name is very easy. We give a lightweight query editor experience. Maybe you're familiar with SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. Maybe it's Visual Studio Code, and those things work well with this. But we have customers that like the Fabric browser platform. They're like, can't you just give me a query editor right there? We're like, we can do that. And you know what? Let's go put a copilot in it. So of course, we're going to put a copilot in it as well. And then all of our client tools work naturally with this, whether it's Visual Studio Code or Management Studio. I will tell you right now that I wish I could tell you all this really cool stuff that's happening a week and a half from today. There's this thing called the Fabric Conference in Europe, in Vienna. I might be traveling there to talk about these new things. So, I'm sure you're going to try to twist my arm and say, tell us the new things, because I want to get on social media and say I heard it before Bob got on stage. Sorry, but pay attention. I just want to let you know. What you see, some of the things you're seeing today for SQL database and Fabric, there's some new stuff coming out. And we'll be showing that in about a week and a half in Europe. What about this idea of mirroring? So wouldn't it be cool that behind the scenes, once you create this database and you start adding data to it, that we could automatically mirror this data inside the Fabric, which you don't do anything. Stick it in this one lake format, which is like this concept called delta parquet. Maybe you've heard of that before. Just put it in that format. And now you have a read-only version of your data that doesn't affect your operational database, automatically available. And give it to me in what we call an analytic endpoint or another query editor that feels like a warehouse. So in other words, deploy a database, put some data in it, and give me a warehouse, automatically. And keep it up to date all the time. That's what we mean by real-time replication into OneLake. And what's really beautiful about this is that that OneLake data can be integrated with any of the data you have. Doesn't matter where it comes from. Because this concept of OneLake, with things like lakehouses, just look like some beautiful set of tables. Because we're all using this consistent delta parquet format. And by the way, when you start using a Fabric in the query editor, you'll notice these things called a SQL database and an analytic endpoint. So when you click the SQL database, you're in the experience of using the operational SQL server. When you click analytic endpoint, you're using this copy, this mirrored OneLake copy. Know this, that SQL Server itself, or Azure SQL and Fabric, is Azure SQL behind the scenes. We don't have some special way, we're not storing the actual SQL Server database and transaction logs in OneLake. It's still the SQL Server process that you know. We just abstract you from the storage, all of that. It's the OneLake part where we kind of keep a copy in Delta Parquet. So developers came to us and said, this is a pretty cool system. I wouldn't mind having some DevOps, CI/CD type processing within the Fabric environment, and SQL be part of it. And we're like, we can do that, because guess what? We adhere to what Fabric already provides, which is source control at what's called the workspace level. If you ever use resource groups in Azure, you should think of the same concept. So a workspace, a database can be part of a workspace, but a bunch of other Fabric items as well. And so you can do source control now, and we've integrated this in with the SQL source control system. So for using GitHub or Azure DevOps, imagine you managing database projects now with all your SQL code, stored procedures, schema, table definitions, all integrated in with Fabric source control. So let's look at a quick example if you've never seen this before. Look, Ma, no hands. This is me doing a demo, not live, recorded. Did you know that demo recordings play the same way every time? It's pretty cool. So put it in your database, and by the way, I only time-lapse that by like 2 seconds. That's how quick it is. And already, I'm just using stuff I already know. I've got like insurance claim data. So I use like an Object Explorer experience to see what my tables actually look like. I will go over here, and you know what I'm going to do? I don't know about you, but I'm going to go use Copilot because I'm a lazy SQL programmer. So this Copilot experience is really nice to help you generate SQL queries. Help me join these tables. Guess what? It knows your schema. Because what I just said in the panel, we're feeding the schema to an AI model and coming up with a nice little select statement for you. Now, what I love about also this experience for me is it helps me fix problems. So I've got a syntax error. I can simply say fix query errors. It actually sends the script to a model, say fix this query for me, and boom, I fixed it inside the editor. I can even hit explain. We'll feed the query to a model with the metadata, help me create documentation. Okay, maybe you've not heard of this concept before, we call it GraphQL. It's a new way of accessing your database data. The GraphQL API is built into the engine, and you see here the source control system as well. So you can do GraphQL type database applications easily. You've got source control built in, all kind of built into the language. Now this is the SQL. I'm going to now flip over and take this query, this join, and flip over to the SQL analytic endpoint. The same exact query. Hit over here, I'm hitting the copy of my data, the mirror of my data. I will simply hit new query. I will paste it in, and I'll get the exact same results. Really, really nice, because now I know that I can offload analytic type read-only queries and put them and not touch my operational database. So it's just like you today taking Azure SQL instead of a replica, or taking SQL Server and doing always on availability group, or SQL replication. We're just doing this automatic behind the scenes. And by the way, real quick, if you didn't notice here, see it says the word like down here, views and so forth. Since this is a warehouse behind the scenes, you can create views and stored procedures on top of this data in the analytic endpoint that are separate from your database. So for example, one of the concepts we're taking a look at, you've never heard this idea before, called reverse ETL. So imagine you building views on top of your analytic data, taking the results of the views and pushing that back down into your operational database to help take like maybe qualitative analysis and make your operational data better. So you can do that all through this analytic endpoint. That is a simple story of how you can do SQL database in Fabric. Okay, what about autonomous and secure? So notice here that what you love and seen today in Azure SQL just works. Automatic backups, automatic HDR. Developers told us, I love Azure SQL because I don't have to worry about availability groups, backups, all those things. Microsoft manages that for you with an SLA. I get all of that because behind the scenes, we are using Azure SQL database to make that successful. And then all the beautiful things that come with the security all work as well. Now, one of the things that in SQL Database and Fabric we're working on right now in a project is getting what we call parity. For example, auditing. Auditing is coming. We're going to do auditing for SQL. We've been on a roadmap for a while. So that exists in Azure SQL Database today. Why can I not do that in Fabric? So here's one thing we're looking at. We got to make sure that we're in this Fabric ecosystem. We want to make sure we don't violate any security policies at, say, the workspace level, or any direct access to things like Azure Storage should work more from a OneLake perspective versus direct Azure Storage. So that's why sometimes these features get a little more delayed in Fabric than exist in Azure SQL. But all the security things you need that you love and see in SQL exist in Fabric. Okay, this is what the architecture kind of looks like. It's kind of interesting. There's that fleet of databases that are using serverless technology, so auto-scaling exists already. Auto-scale for storage. You don't specify how many cores you want. You don't say how much storage space you need. We just give you whatever you need from that, and then of course we charge you in this concept called a capacity unit based on your usage of the database, based on core usage, based on storage usage, and these are all, again, serverless auto-scale, so you're only getting charged for the CPUs you're using for the database. And then notice, we're mirroring that in real time into OneLake, and then use these other tools to go access that data. Here's one of the cool stories about these mirror data. Same thing applies if you mirror outside of Fabric. The mirrored storage is free. 1 terabyte per what's called an F capacity model. So this is a very common pattern to have something called F32, for example. So 32 terabytes of mirroring storage, you don't pay for. Now, you pay for the compute when you start querying it, but it's nice to know that the copy, the read-only copy my data, I don't have to pay for all the storage that actually takes place. It doesn't matter where the mirror is coming from. It could be automatic mirrored inside SQL database and Fabric or from somewhere else. Okay. Let's talk about AI. What a topic, right? So here's what we're doing in SQL. And when I said to you in the panel about built-in functionality, here's what I meant. A vector store built into SQL Server and a SQL database in Fabric, an easy integration with Azure AI Foundry. We believe that if you're running in a cloud system like Fabric or Azure SQL, that the integration points should be in the cloud. There's no way for you to go tell us, here's my on-premises AI model to use, so we're not going to let you do that. And it's all secure and scalable using T-SQL. And of course our Copilot experience. So let's take a look at an example. Let's do it from an example of an application, like an insurance claims company. So what they're trying to do is this. They're struggling with claims policy handling. Customers can't find their claims. Let's say it's a commercial insurance company. These customers have thousands of claims. They can't find anything. And then when they ask for some appeal to a claim, it takes days. It's too manual. It's really hard to do. So what they want to do is they want an integrated approach to help customers find their claims, and then maybe do something on the back end to get assistance from AI using an application with a model to see if they can help with this claim processing. So here's a possible architecture. This is going to look so complex when I finish this. But I will tell you that I've built this myself and it took me like a couple of days. So inside Fabric is the gray box. So we already have a database for our claims and our customers. That's inside our SQL database in Fabric, just an insurance processing system. Remember, it's automatically mirrored into OneLake. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an embedding model in AI, Azure AI Foundry, to do vector support. We're going to go and use T-SQL functions built into the engine to go get embeddings based on text data, store those as numbers inside SQL Server as a vector store with a new vector type, and that's going to allow you to do something like this. You're going to have some sort of app with the customer, and they're going to be able to type in questions, like natural language prompts, like chatting with their claims, basically. But it's a secure model, because it's all inside the database. We did use the embedding model to go generate based on our text, but we used it all in control with Azure Foundry. We control who deploys the model. We control who gets to do T-SQL to access the model. And everything else is stored inside the database. So we've already supported what I call an operational RAG pattern using vector search as part of our solution. Well, what about the claims processing? How do I do claims processing today? I'm no insurance expert, but what you're probably going to do is take a look at the customer, their claim, what they're asking for, what's their history, how much money they're spending with us maybe, the policies of the company. Could we use AI technology to assist the actual claims policy handlers? Here's a possible solution. We are going to use a concept called event streaming with SQL and real-time intelligence. So when claims come in, and a customer says, I'd like a review of a claim, that ends up being an insert into our database. That insert can be streamed real-time, not affect the operational database, in the background through something called real-time intelligence. We can take that information, including the customer, and this is the beautiful part. Because the data is mirrored in OneLake, the actual data science, which is a PySpark notebook, can look at not just at the claim review, but go look at OneLake to find out the customer information, this profile, their history, their claim spend, everything about them. We can take that as a package of data, as an application, and send that information to an agent in Azure AI Foundry. That agent is itself an application that uses an AI model. And we have told that application as an agent, your job is to assist claims handlers to help when we give you information about claim reviews. You assist us and tell us what you think. And that agent, by the way, could be behind the scenes, have access to, say, a PDF file with policies for the company on how to handle claims. All happening asynchronously. That agent is going to come back and say, here's our recommendation. That recommendation, this is the part that you're going to be blown away. I can go create a new table in my OneLake. It's a Delta Parquet table. So I'm going to go create a new table and store the recommendations there. Now in my OneLake, I have the customer, the claims, the review, and the recommendations. I'll just build a Power BI report on top of it, and I'll give that to the claims officer. So a claims officer now can just do a Power BI report to look at these reviews very easily, but see what the agent has recommended based on all the details. They don't have to go figure and manually look this all up. They have everything at their fingertips. All of that on the right-hand side, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is all asynchronous in the background. So as these reviews are coming in, this is just constantly cranking through. Imagine a world where you took that solution and you even use things inside Fabric to maybe send a Teams message to the officer. Warning, alert, we have a very high-profile customer that you need to help right now. Or maybe it's put into a queue or something to prioritize how they should handle things. It could even be like an email message or something. And in fact, you could even use something called translytical. This is where it gets crazy. In Power BI, how did we let Patrick and Adam do this? I don't know why. But those guys in a Power BI report can write back into SQL. Oh, bless us. I don't even know how we're letting them do this. And every time Patrick LeBlanc shows us, I just cringe. It's okay. It's all good. It's something called a user data function. But yeah, you can take a Power BI report now in Fabric, set up user data function, and actually write data back into your database. Maybe that ends up writing back into a queue or a recommendation system. This is all possible for you to do with Fabric. And SQL can be a big part of what you're doing here for your application. So I'm just going to show you a couple of, just because we only have like 10 minutes. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what this kind of looks like behind the scenes. This is the syntax now to access AI inside SQL Server. You're like, huh? What's that mean? So now you can do a new T-SQL statement. This is in SQL 25 and an Azure SQL database in Fabric. I can declare a model I want to use in Azure AI Foundry to generate what's called embeddings. Here's the part that's really going to blow your mind. A little side note to promote SQL 25. That model can be on-prem. Just say Olama or something else. That model can be hosted in a cloud. It can be hosted in OpenAI. It can be hosted anywhere you can access an embedding model. And once you declare that model, you can use T-SQL commands to take your data, send it to a model, get back these embedding numbers, store them in the database, and do that vector search concept. Pretty powerful stuff. Okay, once you do that, what do you do in that event streaming scenario? Well, this is an event stream that I've built. I set this up with no code, and I've set it up in such a way that I'll take changes on the left side from the database, these inserts, and I'll feed them to what's called a custom endpoint. So that custom endpoint can be read by PySpark. And so, did you know that I am not a PySpark developer? Don't claim to be. How did I build this? I built this with Microsoft Copilot, 100%. It took me about 2 hours to go back and forth with it and kind of get a recommendation how to do it. And I fed it information about my schema, what I was trying to do. I read my endpoint, here are my queries to go after the analytics endpoint, right, to get the customer data. And notice here, here's my prompt and system message to send to the model. So I'm sending that to an agent, and that agent is using a model again to go make recommendations. And here I have built-in functions in Python, PySpark, to get back the recommendations and write it back in the table. You don't have to be a PySpark guru to make this work. Like I said, took a couple of days with Copilot helped me make this. And I sent it to our team. They said, this is pretty good. How'd you do that? I'm like, well, sorry. Here's Copilot. Not that I don't need that team. They're great. So once I have that, I can do something like this. I can build a really nice Power BI report, and I'm no guy in the cube. I don't want to be. So I can use Copilot inside Power BI and help even me build reports like this. So pretty cool technology. Put this entire solution together to show you what is possible in the Fabric system. You could build this yourself without Fabric. You could. In fact, for the vector searching part and the AI engine part, I could just use Azure if I wanted to make all that work. But how do you do the real-time intelligent part? How do you do the OneLake, the analytics, the Power BI? That takes a lot more time to wire all that together. And in Fabric, it was all easy for me to stitch this in one cohesive solution. And one thing to remember, everything I built in that diagram was in a single workspace in Fabric. So I control the security of who accesses that workspace. I control the security of the OneLake that I set up. I can even set up and control the capacity that that workspace is allowed to use from a consumption plane. So that's a pretty cool end-to-end story of SQL database in Fabric. Okay, let's finish off the last 10 minutes. Is that cool? Who's the next speaker again? Who's the next speaker? 10 minutes? Am I good? Or okay. What a nice person to let me go. How long do you get?
30 minutes.
Okay, well I'll finish in 5. How's that? Make it a bit easier for you. Because I know people are going to scramble and so forth. They're going to all stay for yours. Right?
Yeah.
Of course. Of course. So, remember I told you to get the data in OneLake was a nice advantage, like I just did automatically? There's that error from databases going to OneLake. What about all this? So now, SQL Server 2025, SQL 16 through 2022, Azure SQL managed instances could all be mirrored into OneLake. Imagine a world where you could have databases across all of those properties, on-prem and in the cloud, and let's say they're related to each other, but they're different databases. You can join them all together. Go build an application today that can join all that together. Good luck with that, right? But if you put all this data into OneLake now, they're in an analytic endpoint where you can actually join data together in a SQL-like language in a very easy way. So let's look at this a little bit. This is the architecture for SQL 16 through 2022. We're going to use change data capture, if you've ever heard that term before, in SQL to make that work. Why? Because that's the only technology that's common between SQL 16 and 2022. In this case, you do have a gateway program that runs on your network. It serves as both the control plane and what we call the data plane, because it is effectively the CDC app pulling changes and putting them into OneLake for you. That's the SQL 16 method. In 2025, we up our game. We have something called change streaming now. So instead of requiring CDC, we can read the transaction log in SQL Server. The gateway is just a control plane. It just tells us what to do. It tells us where is the OneLake landing location. In SQL Server, we read the changes for committed transactions. We push those over into OneLake, and a service behind the scenes puts them automatically into this Delta Parquet format. This is beautiful. This is how Azure SQL works, Managed Instance works, and now SQL Server 2025. When I have gone to the Fabric conference, I was in Vegas in March with my colleague Idris. We had a session called Fabric Mirroring for SQL Server. We're like, I don't know, we'll get 20, 30 people. People were in tears trying to get into this room. We had over 300 people in this room with a line out the door with people trying to sneak around the security guard. I'm not making this up, to line the walls so they can see this presentation, because everybody is interested And how do I get my existing data in Fabric from SQL Server? Because they want that beautiful story of just what I showed you before in this AI application. So, quick couple of little small demo here. I think I've got the audio on here. Let me stop that. That's bad. Let's see here. So, quick tip, if you want to take a nap on a Sunday or something, you can go unmute these slides and listen to me drone on at these demos. So my goal was to take all these tables right here from this database and separate them out into different databases like Azure SQL, SQL Server, whatever, and then bring them all back together inside Fabric. And I can do that. And in fact, this is where I've actually mirrored a SQL database at Azure for the products part of my database. But what I want to do is I wanted to mirror other parts of the data from SQL Server for the sales. And I've done that. I'm doing that gateway. Once I do that, I can do some fun stuff. Here we go again. Me droning on. Who wants to hear that? I guess I unmuted all of these things. I think I was showing somebody how you can listen to these slides. Oh, that one's muted. Okay, great. This is what I want to show you anyways, to kind of wrap up here. So, this is a lake house. Do you see it over here? It looks like one big database, even though, so I can take that lakehouse concept and go build a semantic model on top of it. I just want to show you what's possible. I took multiple databases from different sources, put them in this one lake concept in a lakehouse. It just looks like the database I originally had in SQL Server. That is kind of the beauty of putting things together. Now I can do a model on this, Power BI, things called data agents, all sorts of different types of technology. Okay, I know we flew by so many things today. Let me just wrap up with a bunch of resources for you and some things on our roadmap. Maybe some of these things will show up next week, I don't know, in a couple of weeks in Fabric Conference. I'm not really sure. It would be kind of cool, actually, if we could actually announce some things on this slide. But don't go to social media. Take this photo and say, Bob Ward announces at the Fabric Tour in Dallas new features. But we actually published this roadmap in March in our Vegas event. But yeah, some of these things are going to come to fruition for sure. And I will tell you one thing that I love about our team, especially with Fabric pushing us. This new site called Fabric Roadmap is where we're going to be very intentional about telling you over the next year what kind of things are we delivering for the future. So lots of good stuff for Fabric, SQL database in Fabric. Now you kind of think, you've walked away with busting a couple of myths. You can do SQL Server inside Fabric for very good reasons, or you can mirror your data in existing SQL servers in Fabric for just getting that beautiful unified platform for analytics. I am absolutely going to stay around for a few minutes after this presentation. I know Cal's going to come here and get set up. Happy to chat with you so much. Thank you so much for supporting this event. It means a lot to the organizers. It means a lot to me for you to be here in the DFW area. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.